Hi everyone, it's Tara Bianca with Be Light Transformative Therapy, and today I thought we'd try something a little bit different. I want to share with you a personal story, and this particular story that I want to share with you has to do with how I not once, but twice, blacked out trying out this crazy breathing technique. Okay, so before I got into being an Oxygen Advantage instructor and really kind of honing in on truly functional breathing for daily life, I was experimenting with a lot of different breathing techniques. And one of these breathing techniques that I was practicing for a long time and also facilitating with my clients was a hyperventilative technique. Now, I know all you Wim Hofers out there are doing some amount of hyperventilation, right? You guys are taking these 20 or 30 big breaths before you go into your long breath holds. And maybe you're doing 3, 4, 5 sets of that. So 20 or 30 big breaths of hyperventilation, what does that come out to? Maybe a minute or two of hyperventilation, and then you're doing 3 sets. So maybe throughout the day, you're doing like 6 to 8 minutes of hyperventilation. So this technique that I used to practice and that I have facilitated with other people, we would sometimes hyperventilate for, I'm not kidding, 60 to 90 minutes straight. And when you're in these long seminars, these 7-day seminars experimenting with this breathing strategy, you're sometimes doing that 3 or 4 times a day. So we're talking 4 to 6 hours of hyperventilation. And it seems so crazy for me to be admitting that to you because if you've been following the channel for a long time, you know I am very much about this concept of functional daily breathing, and I'm really training people to get out of their chronic overbreathing and their chronic subconscious hyperventilation and really getting their breathing under control, slower, deeper, lighter, getting them to breathe less than they've been conditioned to think they need. And I'm laughing at myself now because the reason I started studying with this particular method in the first place, and I'm not going to name any names because it actually is a pretty famous breathing technique and it does serve a lot of good in the world. So this is not me bad-mouthing or criticizing the technique. It's just sharing a little personal experience for all of you out there who also may have blacked out a few times from breathing in a specific way and just want a little camaraderie. So I'm laughing at myself because the reason I got into working with that company in the first place is because a friend who I totally trust and who is really legit when it comes to human anatomy and physiology recommended it to me. And what's funny about that to me is that the video I just made last Friday talks to you guys about begging you not to just take on any breathing technique because your friend thinks it's really cool or really great or had an awesome experience, right? This is exactly the worst reason for trying any kind of breathing technique. But I fell for it and I did it, and I committed a lot of time to learning and practicing and facilitating this particular style of breathing. Okay, so let's get to the juicy part already, Tara. I know, I'm dragging the story out a little too much. So how did it happen? So already we're in a situation where we're practicing this hyperventilation all the time. And that technique is actually relatively gentle. It's just constant, right? It's a circular, continuous breath and it never stops and it never stops. And in all fairness to the creator and to the team that continues to spread that work, they are not interested in the physical body, right? They're not interested in the anatomy and the physiology. They could care less. The lens is much more spiritual and somato-emotional in context, right? So they're really looking to elicit a strong emotional response and help people kind of start to turn over, transform, bring to the surface these old emotional wounds. And for some people, it works incredibly well. I've had my own personal amazing experiences with that work, and I've also facilitated other people through these amazing transformative experiences. But the point is, you're already spending like 4 to 6 hours hyperventilating throughout the day. And it's intense, right? You're getting a lot of what we call tetany. You're literally cutting off oxygen to your brain, to your heart. It's not for everybody. And so on top of it then, there was this extra little layer that my instructor wanted to throw in as sort of a bonus breath style, right? And so this breath style, I don't even remember what it's called, but you basically get in a quadruped position. So for those of you who don't know, that means like on your hands and knees, and you start hyperventilating the biggest, fastest breaths you've ever done, right? I don't even remember how many, maybe about 20, but then here's the kicker. It's not just 20 hyperventilative breaths. Then at the end, you go from that quadruped position to an upright position. So now there's also this sort of orthostatic hypotension thing happening where your blood pressure just plummets out of nowhere and is lights out. So I don't know that any of this is coming. No one's warned me. Apparently no one else has passed out from this technique before. And so I'm just going with it, right? I'm in the room, I'm in the energy of the group, I like the camaraderie, I like the vibe, and we're just going for it. And I am really pushing this breath. And I go to do this position change at the end, and I just feel my whole body slowly crumble and melt to the ground. And so the first time this happened to me, yes, there's a second time. So the first time this happened to me, I was on a yoga mat in the middle of the room. I'm not even sure anyone noticed. I kind of melted into a puddle. And the weird part is you really feel yourself going out. Like you're very aware that all of your motor control is just gone and you are almost in paralysis and you're just unstoppably melting towards the ground. And I'm probably only out for a matter of nanoseconds. And then when you come back, it's so disoriented. It feels like you've been sleeping for 1,000 years, right? And so that first time that it happened, it wasn't such a big deal. I was in a safe space. And I was allowed to just kind of black out and revive myself on my own with no assistance, and maybe nobody was even aware that it actually happened. But now the second time, and yes, okay, so I know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I know the adage, and it's totally appropriate here. I should have known better. But again, I was still involved with this teacher and with this company and with this methodology. And I was at another seminar where there was probably, 40 of us really vibing, really having this high energetic experience. And someone decides to guide this crazy breathing technique again. And in this case, it was sort of a student teacher who didn't really know how to guide it and doesn't have any experience in guiding it, and also doesn't have any experience with monitoring potential issues that might arise, right? So the second time we do it now, the room is way more crowded. I'm on the periphery. I'm not on a yoga mat. There's definitely objects all around me, some of them quite sharp. You can see where the story's going. So I am gung-ho again. I should know better. I didn't have a good reaction the first time, but I was like, I'm gonna go with the group, peer pressure, right? So I'm back in my quadruped position. And I remember they partnered us up for this particular version of it. So we had like a breathing buddy who was gonna help pace us, right? And I just started flying forward, like breathing way too fast. My buddy was like, what are you doing? It's way too much. He was not helping me pace very effectively. And I'm just pushing as hard as I can, breathing as big and heavy and loud as I can, probably 20 big breaths. And then the clincher is okay, and now sit up straight, bring your arms in the air, and boom, lights out, right? Again, I feel myself going, and I almost for a split second see a couple faces around me too, like, oh, like everything happening in slow motion, like, oh my God, what's happening? And this time I also really knocked my head on the edge of a solid wooden chair. I feel blessed that I didn't hit the very sharp cement corner that was right next to that solid wooden chair, but it really left a big knob on my head for sure. Okay, so what was that experience like though, I think is the interesting part, that experience of blacking out. And I have to say, it's not totally undesirable, which I think I subconsciously knew, and maybe that's why I allowed myself to try this technique a second time, even though I should have known better. It's really trippy, right? Like, so as I said earlier, you're so aware, like, okay, my body's shutting me down. I gotta just go with it. You have no motor control anymore. That neuromuscular system is just done, right? It's literally like turning off the light switch. And then I did feel myself hit my head on that second time that I did it. But then it's like, whoa, I mean, it's like you're on a journey. So that second time for sure, I felt like I was traveling without a spaceship through the universe. Like I was just flying with the stars and I was so happy. I remember just being so elated, so content, so at peace, so unconcerned with worldly matters. It's like that material world just falls away. All of that nonsense worry that we invent for ourselves as humans just falls away. Your ego falls away. Your self-image falls away. Suddenly, you're not concerned with what people think about you and all those silly problems that we invent every day to get so stressed out about. It all just kind of melts and you're just on this journey through space. I want to detail it out a little bit because I'm really curious for everyone else who's ever blacked out for whatever reason. Did you have a similar journey is really what my question is. And so the crazy part is when you black out like that, you're only out for like nanoseconds, a matter of nanoseconds, and yet you are instantly dropped into the deepest dream state. It feels like a dream state. It feels euphoric. You're surrounded by the most pleasant imagery. It's warm, it's inviting. And to be quite honest, both times that it happened to me, I had this like messaging inside of me, like, I don't want to go back. It was really like that. And so for me, it almost felt like what I imagine people who experience a near-death situation kind of go through, or when you always hear people who have actually flatlined and come back, and they talk about like moving towards the light or moving towards the tunnel. You hear that repetitive sort of motif over and over in people's experiences. I really got it, and for me, it sort of was an opportunity to let go and to let go of all the human attachment and that material attachment, and to realize that there feels at least like there's something beyond the physical that we are capable of tapping into. And it just made me wonder, it was like I was practicing for my transition at the end of my life. That's what it felt like. And I remember thinking, God, I hope that transition into whatever comes after this, whatever that death state is as peaceful as this transition that I just experienced, because it is so warm, so inviting, and so easy to let go. So then on top of it, when you come out of it, which is pretty quickly, although you feel like you were blacked out for an eternity, it's extremely disorienting, right? You have no idea where you are and you're kind of mad at people. Like I remember being angry, like, why did you wake me up? I didn't want to come back. I was enjoying myself. And so you're kind of angry at people and you're waking up to these totally disturbed, totally concerned faces, which is the worst way to come out of your euphoric dream, right? And it was really a trip, I gotta say. And so, I don't know, I wanted to make this video to share with you that even though I'm a professional in the breathwork arena, I have definitely made my mistakes in the past, right? I haven't always been as educated as I am now on breathing. I definitely didn't start out learning enough about the physiology of the breath before I started practicing it. Originally, I was much more practiced on this somato-emotional release, which also has a ton of value for people, but it's not right for everybody. And I just wanted to share the story because I'm really curious. So the 3 questions I'm most curious about are, who here listening has blacked out for any reason, or maybe you've had surgery. So I would say the other thing that it's comparable to is getting anesthesia, right? So I've had anesthesia twice in my life also, and the feeling was the same, right? That sudden, quick, like, oh, okay, I have no more motor control. I guess I'll just give in to that feeling. And then you are out for a very short period of time, but you feel like you were out forever. And that when you come back, it's disorienting. So to me, if anyone out there has had surgery, it's also very similar. So I'm curious who has had some either anesthesia or has blacked out for any reason. And then number 2, I'm really curious to know if any of you have ever blacked out from a breathing technique, if you've ever breathed too much that you just knocked yourself out. Your respiratory centers were like, danger, danger, shut her down. She doesn't know what she's doing. We got to cut it off and reset. And then number 3, I'm just really curious to hear about your experience. Was it similar to my experience? Did any negative side effects come out of it? Did it feel scary, or did you also kind of have that euphoric, trippy, like really warm, dreamy, inviting experience? Wait a minute, real quick, let's do a quick recap, a quick takeaway. We forgot to consider what the moral of the story is. So I think number one, it really elucidates how powerful your breathing is, right? So if you think your breathing is not that powerful, you're just absolutely wrong. Your breathing is so powerful, and not just when we're doing these sort of intensive, a little bit aggressive breathing techniques where you get to the point of almost blacking out or blacking out and your body just shuts you down, but also when we're doing these very slow, controlled, deep, light, effortless breaths, it really has a strong and immediate impact on our physiology. So I think that's one of the big lessons that comes out of this story, is that your breath is no joke, right? It really powerfully influences what your physiology is doing, how you feel, what your emotional state is, what your mental state is, what your spiritual state is in certain cases. And then number two, the second moral of the story, which goes back to my video again from last Friday, is make sure you understand the why, right? You can go do an experiment with any breathing technique that you want. It's totally fine, as long as you pay attention to any specific contraindications that are related to you. You want to do it safely. And I wasn't even necessarily doing it safely in this case. But the point is, you really want to understand the why. And your why should not necessarily be because your friend thinks it's really cool or had a good experience. Or in my case, my why shouldn't have been, well, everyone else in the room is doing it, so I might as well jump on board too, right? Like, these are not strong whys. These are kind of pressure from the outside world. There should be a really strong why that connects with your internal environment and your unique, specific needs. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to share a little bit about my personal experience in the breath world. If you like videos like this of me just talking about my own experiences, or perhaps case studies with clients of mine, or maybe more personal stories of how I got into holistic health and how I got into breathing specifically, or any other questions kind of about my more personal life behind the camera, please let me know, because these videos are kind of fun for me to make, and they're a nice balance, I think, to the strict tutorial, more scripted, more hyper-focused videos that I normally make. So that's it. If you like this video, of course, please give it a thumbs up. And I'm always so grateful for all of you when you subscribe to the channel. That really helps small channels like me to thrive in a big way. So I can't tell you how much it means to me when you push that little subscribe button. And also, for anyone who's interested in a more structured breath program, if you haven't signed up for it already, please sign up for my totally free Breath Basics 6-Day Challenge. You can find it on my website. And then also, if you'd like to have more personal behind the camera experiences like this, including live monthly Q&As, and I've also added live monthly guided community breath sessions, then please consider joining my private online Be-Light community. I do not host it on Facebook. I host it on my website, and it's still very small, very intimate. I'm still very much growing that, but I'd love to see some of your faces in there so I can get to know you better and really get to serve you better. And then finally, if you feel compelled to support the channel even further, you can always check out my Buy Me a Coffee page, or you can think about purchasing something for your own breathing education or tuning fork education off of my website. I have a brand new Be-Light store. You can find all of those links in the video description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.